Welcome back, everyone, and I have a slinky. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great, Nick, and I'm just so happy for you that you got a slinky.
I know. It's just, those random things that just sit around your house that you just remember when you were like 6. Then you find you're like, oh my god, this is still fun, even though it's just literally a plastic spring.
The good old days, back when life was a simpler time. So, Nick, how was your weekend?
Well, let's see. I threw knives. I did not put an arrow into my hand like I almost did a few weeks ago. Guys, just be aware. I throw knives sometimes, so, we discussed Chris reporting from a hospital. I might be doing the same.
Speaking of me reporting from a hospital, I bought a nail gun the other day, and not just any nail gun, a big framing nail gun, which if you don't know anything about nail guns, the framing ones are about 10 pounds, and it's probably bigger than my face. So next week, there's a very good chance that I will be in a hospital bed because I put a nail in my foot.
Hey, Chris, one question. Who trusted you with a nail gun?
Amazon.
I think we're going to have to call some Amazon representatives and get that sorted out.
Good luck with that. I'm their top customer, so they'll give me whatever I want.
Lovely. I'm scared. Please do not come to my house. I'm going to lock you out forever.
Well, with that being said, Nick, should we get into this week's news?
I think that'd be a great idea. You want to start us off?
Why not? The first topic of discussion is the big question. Schools reopening this fall. What is the deal? What's happening? Are they opening, staying closed, going 50-50 in person, online? What is the deal? As I'm sure you are aware, there is a lot of things up in the air right now, but some states are coming out with plans, and we're going to talk about 3 of them today. New York is one of them, North Carolina and California, but New York specifically, Governor Andrew Cuomo on Monday, during his press conference, he said schools will be open if the region is in phase 4 and their infection rate is below 5%. If the infection rate is above 7%, the school will be moved to permanent online schooling. And for whether or not schools are going to be split or not split with online or in person, he is leaving that up to the individual schools themselves to come up with a plan, and then his office will approve it or not.
Exactly, and we're going to be seeing those results. Last I knew from one of his press conferences, the dates for that will be between August 1st and August 7th, because obviously schools need a bit of time to prepare for the school year, no matter what system they will be using.
Absolutely. That's pretty much all we've heard on the status of New York at the moment. There has, just a little side note, a lot of parents and families, they're not sure if they want to send their kids back, specifically in New York. I haven't heard much from other states on what families' opinion is. I think New York is very split right now at the moment because New York was the highest numbers. It was the big epicenter, and they don't want to repeat that, and they don't want to put their child's safety at risk. So my curiosity is, which I'm sure we'll hear more about this from him when we get closer to the first week of August, is what are these schools' plans if parents don't feel comfortable sending their children back to school?
I'm kind of interested myself, and here's why. Okay, so it's just as you said, like, we are split as a society, as people, parents, especially, as you stated before, that, a lot of them are concerned. There are some very, very heavy complications when it comes to this because, to do a hybrid learning system, because if you've been paying attention at all, to everyone listening, if you've been paying attention at all to some of these reopening plans, you might have seen that a lot of schools in a lot of different states are thinking about doing forms of hybrid learning, such as every other day, like students will be split in half, and one half will go one day, and then the other half will go the next day, and it'll be an every other day system. One of my questions is, if they do a system like that specific system or some variation of it, what is that going to mean for parents that work that don't work from home, they actually have office jobs or jobs that involve them leaving the house. What does that mean for them? What are they going to be able to do? What are they going to have to do? And I think this is a huge worry, especially for your younger students, for younger kids, because high school students, they can handle themselves for the most part, at least better than younger kids can. They have more experience with the technological aspect. Oftentimes, they are a bit more patient when it comes to stuff like that.
Some people are patient.
Some people. You're going to see a lot more patience in an older community, though, than like an elementary system. But it's going to be I'm very curious to see what's going to be done. Not in just New York, obviously very closely New York because that's where I am. But I'm curious to see across the nation what happens and what some of these governors do. But we're already seeing some plans from other governors across the country. We've seen a couple more plans, which we have here to report to you.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, before we jump into the next one, it's going to be, as you said, it's going to be interesting, specifically elementary and maybe some middle school students. Parents are going to have to be home. Obviously, you can't leave your 5-year-old home 8 hours to be alone. That's just simply not safe for them or really anyone to have them just home alone. But if the parent is able to have the option to work from home, because some people do have that option, obviously medical professionals, they can't work from home, so that's going to bring up issues. But if it's someone that can work from home, how are they going to be able to do their job from home and work with their child 6 hours a day to... Is there going to be some plan in place where they can leave work and teach their child and still have their job secured and they'll be getting paid through the state or the federal government to teach their child? Because I don't know how that would be possible. You to be working from your job in Zoom meetings while you're also with your child while he's in a Zoom meeting.
Right. And actually, just thinking and talking about the subject now, I always forget about this, and it brings up a very good question for people, especially like me specifically. I have pretty much no vision at all. If schools reopen and we do have to social distance, 6 feet separation and all of that good stuff, how does that work? How's that going to work? What's going to be the plan for people like myself who can't see other people in order to socially distance? So there are definitely some complications with these ideas. You're obviously not going to be able to please everyone no matter what system you do. And it's going to be interesting to see what the plan's going to be from here on out.
Absolutely. And Governor Cuomo made it very specific in his press conferences. Socially distance and mask wearing everywhere, and he said this specifically, including cafeteria. Well, my thought is, my school, I don't know what the size of yours is, but my school is just under 2,000 people, and that's just 9th grade through 12th grade. So how are you going to socially distance almost 2,000 people in a building that's already a little small for that large amount? It's a little cramped in some hallways. How are you going to socially distance that? Is the bell schedule is going to have to change. And then the biggest question, how are you going to social distance people in the cafeteria?
How are you going to social distance people in general? I mean, you can't, I don't care what guidelines you put in place. As a teenager, obviously I know, but anyone knows that you're not going to be able to socially distance friends and couples and all that. They don't care. They eventually just stop caring. You're not going to be able to keep them apart.
Absolutely, and especially the younger ones, I would say middle school. And they understand what's going on, but I don't think they understand the large amount legitimacy of what's actually going on.
Right.
At the beginning of this, they were staying home, but I know in early April, I know a few people in middle school, and they were like, I'm going out, I don't care. If I get it, I get it. If I die, I die. They don't really understand the whole concept that they could get it. They might not get sick from it, but they can give it to other people.
Right. Well, I know even a bunch of high schoolers who were doing this, and I mean, I get it. I do. I sat around all throughout this pandemic situation, during the quarantine. I sat at home for the longest time, all the way through May, early June, I think it was. Just not doing anything, not leaving the house. I didn't go anywhere, except for switching back and forth between my mom's house and my dad's house. Didn't go anywhere else, ever. I know full well how terrible that can be. And even I eventually just I started going to friends' houses, early June. And you can't keep these friend groups, whether they are in elementary school, whether they are in middle school, whether they're in high school. I don't care. You're not going to be able to keep these groups apart. You're not going to be able to keep couples apart. They're teenagers. They're going to fight back, no matter how much they understand about the situation.
Absolutely. And yesterday, full disclosure, I do work at a doctor's office, so I do see a lot of these things. Even the older generation, it seems like they don't, they understand it, but they're starting to get a little not very cooperative of it.
Or crabby.
Very much so. And I've noticed that many people want things here and now. And in the time period that we are in right now, you're not going to get things here and now. So this lady yesterday, she walks right up to me without a mask on or anything. I'm walking through the parking lot, so I don't have a mask on. And she walks up to me and goes, "Where do I park my car for COVID testing?" And I'm like, I looked at her and I go, "Excuse me, you're getting tested for COVID and you're not wearing a mask?" She goes, "Yeah, what's wrong with that?" And I just looked at her and I said, "Get back in your car and go park where it says COVID parking, please." But the thought of these people, they're just getting so not cooperative. They're not thinking. People are just COVID crazy. That's the only way I can think to call it. They're crabby, COVID crazy, and they're just not using their heads and thinking.
Well, and all of this comes in an era of complacency. And a lot of it has to do with the way technology, in my opinion anyway, it has a lot to do with how technology has made us expect things to come to us immediately. Think about everything we have. We can get news stories immediately. We can get information immediately. We can get food without leaving our house. We can have it ordered and shipped, brought to us within 10, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. We expect things here and now because
things are taking a lot longer now because of the guidelines that are put in place.
Right. And here and now is a system that we've been completely adapted to because of technological advancements. Now we're paying the price for it. For years, people have been saying, and don't get me wrong, guys, I am a huge technology activist. As someone who's blind, technology is my best friend and my savior. But this is what technology has done. It's made us complacent.
Absolutely. And not to get too much farther off track, but I was talking to a lab tech at work yesterday, and she goes, before all this happened, people could just come into our waiting room and just stand there and wait. But now they have to get their temperatures taken, being asked questions before they can come in, and only a certain amount in this waiting room is allowed. Only a certain amount's allowed out in the lobby, and then the rest have to wait outside. And before it would only take 10, 15 minutes from getting checked in and getting your blood drawn, and you could be gone in 10 to 15 minutes. Now it's taken, when first thing in the morning everyone's coming, it could take up to an hour before you get your blood drawn. Between waiting outside, getting your temperatures taken, getting asked questions, checking in, and then finally getting your blood taken. It's taken some people up to an hour, and people are not happy about that. Which, yes, I understand it, but there's nothing that people can do about it. These people that work in the medical field, they have family, they have friends that they have to go home to. It's not fair for them to put their life in jeopardy just to take your blood.
Right. No, I completely agree. And to completely circle this all back around, all of these stories show, everything we've said to this point just goes to show, doesn't matter if you're a student or an adult or whatever, no one is going to, or at least a lot of people are not going to follow the social distance regulations if school comes back.
Absolutely. And I think the whole point of this conversation, how it started, was people are afraid to send their kids back, but they're going out themselves. But everyone's scared of the unknown. I think that's what's causing most of this not, quote unquote, using your brain, because everyone's scared of the unknown.
Well, and it doesn't help that through all of this, our leadership, and not just our leadership, but the scientists who have been working on this, both groups have been throwing us in every single direction. Government and leadership. We've had constant fighting between federal governments and state governments. If you watch New York press conferences with Cuomo, you'll see his constant bashing of Trump, because Trump's over here being completely reckless about this whole thing, trying to open everything back up. He's strongly advocating for schools to reopen, no restrictions at all, going as far as to threaten to withhold government funding for schools who use social distance methods. And these state governors are realizing that that's not safe. And so it's causing fights, it's causing confusion, it's causing panic, it's causing arguments between the general public. And beyond that, we move into the scientists, the CDC, WHO. They have been throwing completely different information at us all throughout this whole thing. Ever since March, they've been going back and forth on what people should do to prevent this. They've gone back and forth on needed and required regulations. They've gone back and forth on everything. And so to be changing your opinions that much between the CDC and the WHO, along with the fighting coming from our leadership, people are terrified.
Absolutely. And I think the governor in North Carolina, he might be terrified a little bit too, because he had, at the original time of him talking about schools reopening, he had 3 plans, with plan A being full reopen, no restrictions. Plan B, the one that he has chosen to lean towards, is 50% online, 50% in person, whether flipping back and forth each day or bi-weekly. And then plan C was fully online schooling, and he said that if schools feel more comfortable doing it online, he fully supports that. But plan A, that is not an option. No school is going to be allowed to do that. It's either plan B or plan C.
Yeah, and he faced scrutiny for leaning towards plan B, because it's, as we said earlier, you're not going to be able to please everyone with no matter what you do. None of the plans, none of the 3 proposed ideas received majority support. So he went with the plan that he felt most comfortable with and saw as the safest plan. And I personally agree with his decision. One thing he did do to kind of limit the scrutiny a little bit was he eased off of the capacity. So instead of 50%, he kind of backed off that a little bit and more said that officials will work with the schools to see exactly what their capacity would be on a safe social distance level, how many students they can fit while still using a 6-foot rule and all of that. But obviously masks and all of that are still going to be absolutely required between students and school officials and employees.
The next location we're talking about is California. If you're not aware, California is seeing a spike right now, and Orange County's board recently came out with their rules, and that is pretty much there is no rules. They're fully reopening and restrictions, but a lot of the schools in that county are not agreeing with that and not going to be following those rules.
There were videos that came out, news reports of parents rioting after board meetings because, they of course don't want to risk their children's lives. And there are these battles between the parents, the school officials, and scientists are getting involved in this. The national scientists are starting to get involved with this and make comments about the whole thing. Some saying that, going back to school in a physical setting is absolutely required and absolutely necessary for both the students' learning needs and requirements, as well as for like mental health. I think it's safe to say that quarantine has done a lot to stress kids out. I know from personal experience as well as from the experiences of a lot of people I've talked to. Online learning did a number on people. It really did. A lot of people didn't like it. Some did. Some really benefited from it. Others, and I think the majority, suffered greatly because of it. And so there's a huge battle. Scientists are coming out and saying that the transmission of the disease is a lot less likely in kids under the age of 19, if I remember correctly. But obviously parents are still going to worry because, well, those are their children. So they don't want to risk their children's lives. So it's a huge battle right now in
Absolutely.
Orange County.
And I think that specifically Orange County is they don't even know what the heck's going on, really, because the government, specifically the White House, is actively trying to discredit its own medical professionals and health experts. Clearly, this is not normal, and it does not help the nation that's suffering right now. And, they're trying to pick what's best. Obviously, they picked a terrible choice, but nevertheless, they don't even know what's going on. Like, no one knows what's going on because right now it's just a fighting back and forth between all the governments, the states, the federal government. It's just back and forth. No one knows what's going on, and it's a shit show. That's what it is.
Yeah, completely. And Chris, I don't know if you saw, there was an article from the New York Times that came out yesterday, I believe, that stated that testing results, the White House officials no longer want those test results to go to the CDC. They're saying to bypass the CDC and send them directly to a Washington, D.C. database. I read this. I'm losing my mind.
It's ridiculous. It truly is. And then Trump in his press conference yesterday, he said that he thinks that the governors that are choosing to open solely, they're only doing it to make themselves look good and help their campaign, but really, it's going to hurt them in the long run. This is what he's saying in his pandemic press conferences. Like, he's more worried about a campaign than he is the people, so he's not even thinking less than he ever has, really.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm speechless when it comes to him now. We've seen him do so many different things over the years, during his presidency, but we are seeing a whole new level of, idiotic action, just idiotic wording. It's crazy. It's crazy what he's been doing during this pandemic, especially in the past, I'd say, month or so. And
it's really f***ed up our nation. We're really f***ed at this very moment because no one knows where to turn, no one knows what to do, and no one knows what the future is going to hold for us.
Exactly. No, it's terrifying. It really is. So, moving on though, but staying on the topic of our president, I know we just kind of bashed him to pieces, but a little bit of a positive note here. The Trump administration has decided to drop a policy that they were upholding, that foreign college students whose courses moved completely online would have had their visas stripped, and they would have been deported from the country immediately. This came after the Harvard University as well as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology both submitted a lawsuit against the government for this policy because of how wrong they found it to be. They filed it against ICE specifically, which, if you don't know, ICE is one of the groups that work for immigration policies, and they are one of the agencies that is responsible for deporting illegal immigrants and all of that. But the announcement came at the beginning of the court proceedings. The judge who was presiding over the case announced right at the beginning that they had reached an agreement, that the two groups had reached an agreement, and that the policy would be walked back and dropped. So now these college students, these foreign college students, if their classes do become fully online courses, they do not have to worry about being sent back and removed from the country. So this was a bit of a surprising note, to say the least. It was a bit of a surprising story.
Well, Jeez and Crow with two major universities, along with a whole slew of other universities suing you. Personally, Nick, I would back right off of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
but
it would cost more in lawyer fees than my whole year's salary as president.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, and you're definitely not wrong. It's a little surprising, though, even so, to see that they didn't try to fight it at all, that they did immediately walk the policy back. We haven't been seeing a lot of that, to say the least, with stuff like this, especially when it comes to foreign policy. We have not been seeing a lot of positives in that regard in the past couple of years. So to see a win like that for foreign students, it's good. It's good to see, even if it was maybe a little bit forced, a bit of a forced hand upon the Trump administration. They didn't fight it. They decided to just immediately walk it back, and that's
probably for the best.
Yeah, it definitely would have created.
It would make great content for us, but I don't know how good it would go out for him.
Yeah, no. I wouldn't see that going well for anyone involved, really.
Yeah, that would be a whole mess.
Yeah, it'd be a completely pointless court case in my opinion, but no, we don't have to worry about it. It's done and over with. These foreign students are protected now. They get to stay in the country, and it's a win. Let's take it. Let's take what we can get at this point, because there aren't a lot of things to celebrate right now. Let's take a win while we have it. Let's take a win while we have it. That's my opinion. I'm happy for the foreign students, of course. But all I can really say to it at this point in our episode is let's take a win while we have it.
Absolutely.
And celebrate it.
Speaking of a win in November, someone will be celebrating. Some of the nation will be celebrating. The other half of the nation might be a little bit depressed. But what we are talking about is the election. And
also scary presidential election.
Yes, that big scary thing. It was a long 4 years. I don't know about you, Nick, but it felt very long to me.
Oh, for multiple reasons.
Yes. But specifically with why we are bringing this up is that an article from USA Today came out the other day saying that Joe Biden is winning in the polls by a lot compared to current president. But they also said that this was saying the same thing as when Hillary Clinton was running for president. So they're pretty much saying who knows what's really going to happen, because polls have lied to us once, they could lie to us twice.
Well, okay. There are going to be some people that will probably hate me for my opinion on the polls and what I have to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, since we're here, and that's part of my job. Polls don't mean what we think they mean. Okay?
That was proved in 2016.
In my opinion, it's been proved plenty. And here's why. Especially 2016. We're definitely going to use that as the main example here. Hillary won the popular vote. Through and through, popular vote was Hillary's win. But we have to remember, the Electoral College doesn't always take into account the popular vote. And this is where some people resent the Electoral College, and I tend to agree at times. The Electoral College doesn't always take the popular vote into account. There are definitely times when the representatives from each state take their own beliefs into account, take their own opinions into account when they make their vote. They don't follow the popular vote of their specific state. And so polls definitely aren't always going to be a guarantee. We can see any numbers we want, but the Electoral College can swing right around and just be like, nope, that's not how it's going to work. And
Absolutely. And we won't get too much into the Electoral College. If you want to hear our opinions a little bit more on the Electoral College, that will be an upcoming episode of Failed Elections every Wednesday until Election Day. But I do have to agree with Nick with the polls. They say what they say. There's many variables that need to be taken into account. One of them being that people will take part in the polls, but they don't actually vote. Particularly in the 2016 campaign, people that were going to vote for Bernie Sanders, they ended up voting for Trump, even though they knew Hillary Clinton would be a better president. They didn't think their vote was going to matter anyways, which that doesn't really make much sense to me, but that is what one of the variables is, and there was a couple others, but those were the two big ones that cause it.
well, I mean, you can't blame them for their thought process. It's as I just said. The popular vote does not mean that that's how the Electoral College is going to vote. In theory, not saying that this would happen, and I highly doubt it would, every single person in an entire state could vote for one candidate, and then the Electoral College representatives could swing the completely other direction. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. And so I can understand why these people would kind of have the thought process, oh, my vote doesn't matter. It doesn't count. I can see the resentment. I can see the thought process there. I don't always agree with that. Obviously, we've seen examples of when that has been the truth, including 2016. But it's a complicated matter. It really is.
Okay, so that's all I have to say about the elections. Do you have anything else you would like to add to that? Because it's pretty straightforward. The polls really aren't the most accurate things for many variables, but
all I'll say is that no matter what your feelings are, whether you think your vote matters or not, just take the second to vote, and don't just vote randomly. Vote for who you want. But no matter what your opinions are of either candidate, take a second to vote for real. Don't
just be like scribble something on there. But
if you don't agree with either candidate, heck, put
vote
your name
for me.
Put your own name in the ballot, or vote for us. Yeah, put us in the presidency.
Vote Chris Baker for president, Nick Rod for vice president.
Of course.
Because I would be a better president than him.
You terrify me as a president. I'm not sure.
So moving on from the polls, we are into our good news story of the week.
And it is Chris on this week's story. So Chris, let her rip.
I would love to, Nick. An Italian football club, or soccer if you're in America, AS Roma is using its extensive social media to highlight the problem of missing children. Clubs in Italy compete for originality when announcing new players signing, and the three-time Italian championships had previously enjoyed a reputation of quirky humor. New signings are now presented alongside the face of a missing child with information, a phone number, and a video clip. Since June last year, 6 children featured have been found in Great Britain, Belgium, and Kenya. I don't think any of us expected a child we'd feature in a video return home safely, said Paul Rogers, AS Roma's chief strategy officer. Obviously, we prayed it would happen, but we didn't expect it. The club is now trying to convince other big names in European football to follow its lead.
Now, this one warms my heart, especially as a huge football fan, or soccer for the Americans.
I picked this story just for you, Nick.
Thank you.
It's a great story, and I'm glad that they were able to create this great idea, and it's actually working out.
Yeah, well, think about it this way. Football clubs have fans worldwide. Football is a worldwide sport, and it's so popular, so popular. And Roma, it's just as it said, is one of the European giants and one of the giants in the Italian leagues. So to have the idea to do something like this is pretty amazing. I love it. I wouldn't expect this necessarily from teams, but it's really cool that this is actually becoming a thing. And if it were to spread, I feel like the amount of missing children that could be found doing this would be insane.
Absolutely. And if the other, like you said, if the other teams do adopt this, it would really make a big impact.
Yeah. So, even sports teams are willing to step up for their countries or for the world. Just doing what they can to help, doing what they can to make a difference, make an impact off the field.
Absolutely, and absolutely. And this is the end of this week's episode of Blind Boys Politics. If you want to listen to a series that just started Wednesday the 15th, make sure you go back and listen to that. And every Wednesday up until Election Day, we will be talking about failed elections and why they failed in the 2020 presidential candidacy. Make sure you listen to that on Wednesday mornings. If you want to read the blog about financial and business advice and just financial news all around, there is a new blog every Monday morning and Thursday morning. But we also have Twitter and Instagram, don't we, Nick?
Yes, we do, Chris. For the podcast, you can find that at Blind Boy Politic, as you said, on Twitter and Instagram. You can find the business and finance blog on Twitter and Instagram. That is at BB_finance_biz. Finance_biz is FINANCE_BIZ. So one more time, that's BB_FINANCE_BIZ. For our personal accounts, you can find me on Twitter at blinding_aura. I say it every week, but that is at BLINDING_AURA. And for Chris, it is at C_Baker002. Baker is BAKER. One last thing that I would like to say is if you're listening to this from somewhere like iTunes, if you'd be willing to leave us a rating on the iTunes store, star rating along with a review, it'd be much appreciated.
And don't forget to hit that follow button.
Absolutely. We upload every Friday, as some of you may know, but for any new listeners, every Friday morning at 7 a.m. we have an upload. We have the new mini series coming out Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. So if you like what you hear from this podcast, please give us a follow. Please give us a review. It would be absolutely amazing. We'd appreciate it so much. And if you do, you might get a shout out. You might get a shout out on future episodes. Or, we could even send you like a personal email thanking you. Just anything to help us would be fantastic, and we appreciate you all.
Absolutely. And for the shout out, if you would like your Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, shout it out, leave a review, and where we can find us, and you will get a shout out in the next episode. But that is all we have for this week's Blind Boys Politics episode. Until next week.
See you later, guys. But please don't forget.
That was easy.
Bye, guys.
Bye!